Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Maestro Conversations. This one's with Landon Smith, a self-proclaimed girl dad who splits time between Georgetown, Texas and Evergreen, Colorado with his wife, 2 daughters, and a dog. Awesome businessman and an exceptional human being. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Catch up soon. I really wanted to welcome you to the Maestro Conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I wanted to first, before starting, maybe tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what's the Landon Team, and yeah, what has brought you to where you are today?
A lot of failing forward, I would say. I like to move. You can't steer a parked car. And you can't adjust to problems you don't know exist. And so moving kind of helps you figure out where the issues are, where the cracks are, and lets you adjust. So it's kind of been that way, really, I would say since high school, since college, whether it was getting out of college and going to try to make it as a independent singer-songwriter. There was a lot of learning lessons there. I don't think in doing that I recognized what was happening from a business perspective, being able to what there was logistics or how are we going to get from point A to point B, or how do we get into this venue, or how do we talk to this record label? It was just kind of try everything and see what sticks, and just keep adjusting. And so getting into real estate while I was still kind of transitioning out of music, it was an interesting time. It was 2010. So rock bottom in the real estate market, and most of my clients initially were somewhere between 30 and 75 miles from where I lived. And so taking from the experience of touring as a musician and kind of setting it up that way from a logistics standpoint made a lot of sense. And so you kind of do that and kind of kept progressing, more deals, more clients, and then eventually left my team lead at the time. We're still friends, great friends, and actually started another company together recently. And but it gets to a point to where you can't do it all, and so I left and wanted to kind of do my own thing. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so kind of started a team really organically, if you will.
That's fantastic. And what? So you mentioned your background in music, right? And how does that is that still something that you do on your weeks, on your day to day? How are you? Because I bet that's part of your passion as well, right?
Absolutely. And music's still a huge part of my life. I play several instruments, and so I still play at my church. I'll play at my church. I play for my daughters almost nightly. And normally, if I was in my home office, which I'm waiting for internet to get installed tomorrow, actually, normally you would see a bunch of guitars and drums and piano and all that kind of stuff. And so my office is kind of set up like a dive bar. So yeah, music's still a huge part.
That's awesome. It's part of the inspiration, right?
Yeah, it's writing songs is very similar to real estate, in my opinion. The best songs come from usually the biggest problems or the worst times, right? That's usually when the best songs come. And so I think sometimes in real estate, whether it's helping people buy, sell, or invest, or when you're building or when you're developing or whatever it is, some of the best processes and ways to do things come from problems that you didn't know about, and then taking that problem and saying, how do we make sure this never happens again, or eliminate the variables or whatever. So there's a creative element there in real estate in general that, at least for me, ties into music really nicely.
Love how you can put those things together and they create kind of like what you do, right? On what motivates you, how you mix that with work, right? And that means that it's something that you enjoy, right? How many years have you been doing real estate now?
About 12, I think. Yeah,
That's
12 years.
And so tell us a little bit more about what led you to build the Landon Team, right? And maybe a little bit of the background of who's the Landon Team, how many team members are in there, and what's the purpose?
Yeah, so it was interesting, as a musician starting out, and I'll tie this into it, but as a musician starting out, it was just me and a guitar and a microphone. And eventually, like, well, it would be great to have some percussion or have a bass player or have a lead guitar player or whatever it is. And but it's kind of starting out with like, okay, what's the base of this? You know what I mean? And it's like, if I'm going to write the songs and I'm going to sing them and play this one instrument, I can't do all of them, right? And it kind of became the same thing in real estate where, you wake up one day and you're like, man, I can't go do this listing appointment, or I can't go do this showing, I can't do, I can't do all these different things. So I think knowing how to do those different things, is helpful, and in several ways. One, you actually understand and appreciate the person that you're going to bring in there to do those things because you've been having to do it. So there's a mutual appreciation there. And then I think second, it's kind of like figuring out what you're really good at and capitalizing on that, and then kind of like backfilling, right? Like if I'm singing and playing, lead guitar, I don't need another lead guitar player. I need a rhythm guitar player. I don't need two bass players, like that sort of thing. So it's really trying to figure out who's in the band, if you will, and how do they fit. And so that's really kind of how the team started, was, okay, I can go show homes, I can go do biz dev, I can go do investments, I can go do these other things, but I can't do them all at once. And so my first team member, if you will, is a guy that's still with me today. He's one of my closest friends, more family and friend. And at the time, he was delivering pizzas for Domino's, and I was trying to figure out how to run a team, how to start one. I had no idea what I was doing, and I still joke that today I had no idea what I'm doing. But yeah, it was really cool. He started working with me, doing kind of odd and end stuff, and unbelievably reliable. And so from there it kind of took off. He got his license and then started doing more and more and more. And now he's right there. I mean, he's so crucial. And it's awesome. It's really awesome.
I love how you mentioned before about your family and how you play music in church as well, and how you use music to explain how it relates to real estate, and now you talk about a team and one of your closest friends and family, and then you start building up you start growing a business, you start sharing what value is to you to others, right? And I think that's why a business succeeds, because at the end it is what you can do to share that value with others, right? So you have an idea of what value is to you, but it may not be the same to what value is to me, right? So let's talk about the value added through education, both maybe to your team members as well as to the people that you serve, so your clients, right? And how do you teach what value is for you with others? Maybe you can unpack that for me.
That's a great question. And I'll back up real quick and say the other two people that are at the core of our team, Billy and Jackie, it was both kind of organic like that too when we met, and they are both also just like family. And I've been working with them since 2014. So just wanted to put that out there too. So we're all very, very close. As far as education and value and stuff like that is concerned, it's really meeting people where they're at. And so one of the things that I would throw out there as an example is providing options, providing things that people haven't necessarily thought of. So as an example, if you said, hey, I want you to come over and list my house, do a listing presentation, like my first question to you would be, why are you selling? Have you thought about keeping it? Have you thought about turning it into an investment property? And the responses we usually get are, I don't want to be a landlord, or I have to sell in order to buy. So being able to say, okay, well, if you had great property management, if you were able to keep this, because we have ways to keep your house and buy another one, is that something you would be interested in? And kind of give them the how, right? And I think what that does initially is, it creates trust, because you're offering things that don't necessarily help your bottom line. It's more about making sure that somebody understands what they can do. Whether it's right for them, I really don't care. I just want them to know what they can do. And so a lot of times it's kind of diving in and really listening to what that person wants and where they want to go, and then kind of like tailoring a plan for how to get there. So a lot of what we're doing is really just providing the how. And sometimes we're the ones executing. Sometimes it's us and a third party. whether it's a lender or a title company or an attorney or a property management company. So it's about the how, right? And that's our whole mission is in doing this is to come up with creative solutions that are like empowering people to get where they want to go.
So that comes with hand on hand with providing value to or empowering your team members as well, so they can also empower the rest of the clients, right?
Sure.
And what would you say it's a value that can define what the Landon team is? So you mentioned family, right? Something like a family and a group that moves together in the same direction. But what else how would you describe your team?
It's a very clear division of labor. So when I take it back to a band, right? If we're going to go play a big show, I need to know that the bass player is not trying to be the keyboardist or the drummer is not trying to be the lead guitar player, right? Like everybody has a role on that stage, and everybody is tied to each other, right? Like if I sing the wrong note, or if the drummer plays the wrong beat, or the guitar player plays in the wrong key, like it all messes up, right? So like there has to be a very, very clear division of labor. So when you look at kind of how we form the team, it's very similar to that, where we have somebody who's educating buyers and getting them into homes. We have somebody that's there helping negotiate, write contracts, get from contract to close. We have business development and more of like the customer relations side of things, and then for what I'm usually doing is going out there and trying new things and figuring out what works, and just as importantly or more importantly, what doesn't work. So a huge part of the value add is not only being able to facilitate a normal real estate transaction more efficiently, because we have different people in different lanes on every single transaction. It's also going out there and having the bandwidth for myself to, whether it's listening to or reading city council notes to see what's coming into a certain neighborhood, or going out and trying a new contractor that we can refer out to clients, or developing and subdividing a property, building a house, like having a short-term rental, long-term rentals in different locations. Like all of these things kind of like tie into where when someone comes in and says, I want to do X, it's like, cool, have you thought about Y and Z? And if they're interested, great, and if they're not, great. Again, don't really care. In fact, this might help. Like I said this was one of my first clients, first or second client. I said, look, I don't care what you buy. I just want it to be the right house for you. And I want you to know everything about the house. If it's right for you, great. And so it's really that kind of approach to where there's no agenda. If there is an agenda, it's to help you get where you want to go. And knowledge that's based on experience is so much more powerful than knowledge based on what you've read online. And luckily, I think for a lot of our clients, my team, we've all invested in real estate. Myself personally, I've gone out there and done so many things that have not worked. So I can stop somebody real quick and say, hey, I screwed this up. Do not make the same mistakes that I made. And so it's fun being able to kind of share that stuff with people and help them avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we made, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it makes complete sense. It goes with what you mentioned before of failing forward, right? And I can hear that the Landon team is a mixture between personal attention, right? Making it more personal, a personal experience, mixing it with creativity and innovation, right? Not just making it equally every transaction, right? Not making each experience the same, just making it different. So I remember going back to college, and there was a professor of mine that she always said, use failure as fertilizer, right? So I can definitely, I really love that failing forward or failure as fertilizer. And I would love to ask you, like, success, it's a pretty broad word because I think it's different for everyone. But how, from your personal experience, how has failure has been, how has the failing forward has helped you grow this business that you have today?
Because it's all educating. Like I said, the education that comes, the knowledge, the education that comes from experience is just so much more valuable. So I don't even look at stuff as failing. I just look at it as like, cool, I can check that off. Like that doesn't work. So it's not even a failure. It's just okay, that doesn't work.
You lived it.
So we know not to do that. Right. And so, the clear division of labor really comes into play on the team too. When we started doing this, there was no textbook on how to divide and conquer in that way. Most teams, and it's not a bad way to do it, by the way. I know some great friends that have teams where, all right, this is my buyer's agent, this is my listing agent, and there's not as much, division of labor there, which is totally fine. When we started doing it that way, there was a lot of intention on trying to make sure that every scenario meant that so and so handles that. Again, kind of like, nope, that's the bass player, that's the guitar player, that's the drummer. And when you have that clear division of labor, it's so much easier to identify problems. So if you called me today and said, hey, I had this issue with X, Y, or Z, I could immediately point to and say, oh, well, I need to go talk to Randy, or I need to go talk to Billy, or I need to go talk to Jackie. And then the question becomes at that point, hey, what happened? And after you figure out what happened, the next question is, could that have been avoided? And if the answer is yes, how do we put something into our process so this never happens again? If the answer is no, it couldn't have been avoided. It's like, okay, well, here's some ways that we can handle this in the future. And then also tell our clients, hey, be on the lookout for X, Y, or Z, if that makes sense. So it's always trying to control as much of the variables as you possibly can, and then be prepared for the ones that might be coming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes completely sense. So I love, because this is a perfect way to maybe ask this question right now. So let's say that I'm an agent who's doing 36 deals a year, right? I'm stuck. I don't want to hire anybody. I'm living under a fear-based mindset, which is maybe not allowing me to make the decision or the right decisions, right? And the fear is making decisions. So I'm doing 36 deals a year. How would I get to those first 48 deals in 2022? So that has been the maximum deals, 36. I want to get to 48. What would you say are the ways that agent could achieve that number?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. More than we have probably time for on this call. I think I would ask that agent who's doing 36 deals a year. First of all, I would say congratulations. That's awesome. That's a phenomenal year. And then I would ask, why do you want to get to 48? Like, is it an income thing? Is it just a status thing? Like, is it to prove something to yourself type of thing? Like, what is the reason behind that? Because if you don't know the reason behind that, you can do what I did in 2000, I think it was 14, and do a lot of deals and be absolutely miserable. So I would ask that question first, and then from there, more of the how, it would be, and find out what you're good at. Like, I literally start writing stuff down where it's like, if I feel a little bit of anxiety or something when someone asks me something or an email comes in or whatever, it's like, what's causing that? If it's like, that's not my lane, or it's not what I'm good at, like, I know I'm going to need to have somebody kind of backfill that role, if that makes sense. So, an agent doing those 36, I would ask them, like, what do you enjoy doing about real estate? Is it being in front of people? Is it writing the contracts? Is it the negotiating? Is it the business development? Like, which of those things is most important to you? Like, what's that thing that like only you can do? And from there, you can figure out, well, I need, help with these other things. And that's where you can make the decision or the choice to either start automating those, whether it's, email templates or, drip campaign, like whatever it is. There's so much technology out there to automate, make yourself more efficient. Or it's hiring somebody to come fill that void, or a combination of the two. And so we put a ton of emphasis on automating what we can. And, so that's what I would tell somebody trying to get to a higher, it's just not a one-way, thing. Because there's agents out there who, one of my best friends he's an awesome real estate agent. And if he was sitting next to me right now, he'd be in a nice suit, and he doesn't do any deals that are more than, that are less than like $1 million. He won't. That's not his wheelhouse. And so for me, I'm not the suit guy, and I'm not really the guy for that price point. I have somebody who is, but that's not me. So it's just hard to sit there and say, well, this is how to get there, because it really depends on the person. But there's so many different avenues and things you can do to be super successful and get to that next level. But I think the first question is why, and the second question is, what do you really enjoy and are good at doing, and then the how starts to kind of like come naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does completely, because it goes with finding your niche, right? And maybe like you did, right? You found your niche, you found your passion, and you found something that you really like doing, which is helping people through, real estate. And I think that once you do that, I think you're ready to go, right? You're ready to enjoy it. And I, from what I've seen and working with the Landon team, what do you guys do? It's fantastic. The marketing and also the how the team works. I've talked with Randy, with Jackie, with Billy, Brian, Morgan, and they do a great job, and they know what they're after, right? And I think it comes with you sharing what value means to you and pushing them to find what really moves, right, and what they're good in. So I think that's fantastic. And so going back to this agent who's thinking on making 48 deals a year instead of 36, which is a fantastic number. What happens if they want to start building a team? What I know there's not like an A, B, C, D, E, F, G step-by-step guide, but there are things that you got to be careful and be mindful of doing when you start growing a company.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to start a team, I would say, again, going back to exactly the question before is, why? Why do you want to start a team? And then what are you good at? And then start backfilling from there, right? And I think so after that, I would tell somebody, make sure you're using some type of personality kind of profile. So you need to understand how you operate. And when you understand how you operate and you understand how somebody else operates, the communication gets so much better. The way you work together gets a lot better. And I didn't do that initially. I wish I would have. Another one of those things I kind of screwed up. I always thought I was I thought I was detail oriented. I thought I was very logical. It turns out I'm actually really emotional and I hate details. So if I would have known that, I would have structured things, I think, initially a lot different. And it's still something we still work on this today. We're going through it right now. And as we're continuing to grow, to make sure that you have the bus, right? You find out, okay, here's who needs to be on the bus. That's great, but man, make sure they're in the right seat. And if they're not, it can go really, really poorly. But there's a lot of really good team leaders out there who are so different, and do things a different way. But I think that's where I would start, is the why, and figuring out what you're good at, where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and filling those with the right people, and also knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Oh, I like the phrase, find the right people for the right seat on the bus, right? I think that's so powerful. And there's so much work for me now that you mentioned leadership, from a leadership perspective, and how you identify one talent, right? Two, how you identify and also understand and that it's a trial and error thing, right? And you cannot find the right person for the right seat on the bus at once, right? Just like, so and maybe it requires coaching, and maybe it's the right person, right? So now that I mentioned coaching, how do you guide people to maybe find the right seat on that bus through coaching and maybe leadership?
So we all have our individual coaches. I've been working with mine for 3 years. She's been phenomenal. And I was one of those people who always looked at that as like, why do you need a business coach? That's weird. I don't need a business coach. And having one has been life changing, because it's somebody that you can like literally tell everything to, what's happening, and then there's a super objective response to that. And so I think everybody really needs one. So I think having the humility to go and say, look, I need this, whether you're, the CEO or the COO or whatever it is, to having the humility to say like, hey, I need this help, allows you to also have that same grace and humility when you're trying to help people figure out, what they're trying to do, and having super clear expectations. As an example, for me, figuring out that I am a pretty emotional guy. Hiring and firing was it was just like, it would keep me up at night, because I cared so much about that person, right? And I wanted what's best for them. So having very clear expectations, to be able to say, hey, look, here's what you can expect from me, and I expect you to call me out if I'm not doing this. Here's what I expect from you, and I'm going to call you out if you're not doing this. If this happens like once, okay, it happens, right? We drop the ball. If it happens twice, kind of like, if this happens again, it's not going to be good. Happens a third time, the conversation isn't, hey, I feel like you're not doing your job, or I feel like it's, hey, these things aren't happening. We need them to happen. We agreed that you would do them. You're not. So either you're not good at them, or you don't like doing them, or you don't really like where you're at, or what. How can I help you either here or somewhere else get where you want to go? Because this clearly isn't working out. And it takes the feel out of it and puts some logic behind it, to where now letting somebody go if we have to, which you don't have to very often, whether it's a vendor or relationship, whether agent, whatever it is, it becomes much easier to do, because it takes all the subjectivity out of it.
Right. And you also have worked on identifying your strengths and weaknesses, and maybe what, like being emotional. I can relate to that. I'm super emotional actually. When Ray and I were talking, sometimes he's like, hey, you know what? You have a great heart, but right now is a moment where you need to remember that you have a great heart. You're super emotional, but you got to put it on the brain. And it's funny when you go to that point, because it's not something that we're used to doing on our day to day, right? And when making decisions, or because at the end, I love my family to death, my friends, and I get easily attached to people. So when it comes to a difficult conversation, stuff like that, so we in Mortgage Maestro have a book club. And that book club, Ray picks the books that we're reading each time, right? And everyone reads 2 chapters or 1 chapter, and then we have a Tuesday morning book club where we talk about the book, right? And a big thing has been difficult conversations, right? And I think it's in our industry we have them often, right? With a client, with a coworker, or even with a vendor, like you said. So when it comes to difficult conversations, what would you say it's your experience in this industry with difficult conversations? And I think it comes, hand on hand with failure and also with growth, right? How would you say it's what would be your best advice for those difficult conversations? I know they're different, right? But when you're in a difficult conversation, how would you approach it? Or what would be the way that you would say, hey, Federico, this is the, if you're in a difficult conversation, remember this, and that, right?
That's an excellent question. So it was about a year ago, and I'm a faith spiritual guy, and so I love there's a book and in the Bible in Corinthians, and it talks about love, and it talks about love is this, it's this, it goes through, and then it also says, you can move mountains, you could move mountains, but if love wasn't there, it doesn't matter. It talks about like everything, if love's not there, because love isn't, here's what love is and what it isn't. So being the emotional kind of guy that I am, I kind of take that approach. Along with, hey, how would Christ do this? Like, how would he approach it? So I ask myself that whenever I have a conversation with somebody, and I give myself the space to, like, sometimes it can be right in that moment. But if I can't honestly say I'm approaching it those two ways, like that way, I won't do it. I'll wait until I can. And what's been great for me in that regard is it takes the emphasis off of maybe what I'm feeling in the moment, and allows me to be more objective. And so and sometimes that means recognizing that, like, doing the loving thing really sucks. Sometimes the truth really sucks. But when you can kind of come at it at that angle, it's like, hey man, I love you, and this isn't working. Like, what's going on? You're asking why. You're seeking to understand, and then from there, you can let the business needs and where they're at kind of like dictate where that conversation goes, if that makes sense. And I think it's the same thing with clients. Like, if we love our clients, which we do, sometimes that's telling them, like, hey, I know you say you want this house, but I don't think it's the right house for you. What do you mean? Like, it doesn't check this box, this box, this box, and that's what you said you wanted, And that's a tough conversation, because sometimes that talks our client out of a deal for us. But if that's what's best for them, I think that's what love would do, right? And so, kind of approaching all those situations like that is what I try to do. And I'm not perfect. I'm so far from perfect. But I've been very intentional, especially in the past year, of really trying to approach difficult situations in that manner. And it's every time I do, it goes pretty well. I mean, sometimes as well as it could, and then every time I don't, it seems like it just does not go well. So
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Good thing this is being recorded because I'm going to rewatch it and take notes from this and for my next difficult conversation. I think everything, it's we gotta walk in love, right? In whatever we do. And I love a word that you mentioned. One of the last words in it was intentional. And I think being intentional, it's the key of it all in this world, right? In whatever we do. So
it is, and I think that there's, especially in this environment, I was having a conversation with my brother about this. He runs a building company, and people, like, I mean, in general right now are just, they're stressed, they're hurting, and, being cooped up, and people, scared of the virus. Some are scared of the vaccine. Some are scared of being cooped up in their house. They're scared of, like, what's my job going to look like? Everything, consumer expectations have risen. The speed in which business transacts has gone up. There's less help. It's a tight labor market. Like, there's all these different things that people are struggling with right now in different areas. Childcare, and I think when you can approach things from that angle of love and also trying to understand where someone's coming from, even if you don't agree with what they say, if you can understand it, even if you don't like it or agree with it, if you can understand it, man, there's some common ground there, and I think that that's something that's just really lacking, and it's been fascinating to get some calls over the last year of people just, I mean, you get on the phone, you're like, man, this person's like lost their mind. They are just so irate or whatever it is for whatever reason, something that we didn't do or I didn't do. And when you can sit there and be like, hey man, tell me more about that. Like, what's going on? And like start diving in a little bit more, you usually pretty quickly get to the source of whatever that issue is. And the vast majority of the time, it's something that has something totally unrelated to what they're going through. And they just haven't been able to verbalize it yet. So giving people that space and really trying to understand where they're coming from goes such a long way in finding whatever common ground there is.
Oh, I'm just thinking on how this is something we should always be mindful of, right? And I think part of what you said is knowing that everyone else is going through different situations in life, right? And everything that has happened, even with the real estate market, right? And it can get overwhelming for everyone, right? Thank you for sharing that golden piece of information, as well as opening your heart and telling me also how you approach business, right? Because I think that's the core of what you do, right? Your own personality put into business and put into work. That's what makes it different and what brings success to the table. Here's some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What do you have there? So, who's your favorite cook?
Oh man, that'd be a toss up between probably my brother, my dad, my uncle. It'd be tough to choose between them. They're all amazing. So
nice. Yeah. Is it same food or different food each one?
They're all different. Like barbecue, like steaks, and then my uncle he always has some crazy thing that I've never heard of, and it's always amazing.
What are your two favorite books?
I would say The Last Arrow, and The Go-Giver.
Ski or snowboard, and why, or none?
I'm a skier. Daughter's a snowboarder, but I would say ski, and I think the reason is it's easier initially to get up on skis and kind of start moving around. It's harder to master, I think, than you talk to professional skiers and snowboarders, and there seems to be some type of general consensus that like mastering skiing, you get two skis or whatever, is harder to master than snowboarding. Not to take away that you watch Shaun White, my gosh, that guy's a freak of nature. But yeah, I think that's probably it's easier to get started, but it's almost like it's only going to get harder.
What is a place in Colorado that everyone should visit?
Uray. I love Uray.
Okay. Why? Is there like a place that you would say, hey, you got to check this out?
Downtown Uray is amazing. It's a little town north of Durango. Yeah, north of Durango and south of like Montana.
What's a restaurant in Texas you will always recommend?
In Texas, I would say in Georgetown, Texas, there's a place called the Golden Rule, and it's downtown Georgetown. super cool place. It has like a speakeasy feel. And I will throw in Colorado because my favorite place in Colorado is it's called Union Bistro in Castle Rock, and it's just
Union Bistro.
phenomenal. Yeah.
And what's your favorite thing of real estate? What do you enjoy?
It's like it can be like a blank canvas. I mean, there's just so many, there's always something to learn. You'll never know everything. And so there's not a day that goes by where it's like, I didn't know that. So you're always able to learn. And I love that about it. It never gets boring.
Well, and I also wanted to ask you, if people want to know more about your team, or even would like to join, right? Where can they reach and find the Landon Team?
I can go to our website, so www.landonteam.com. They could email me, l@thelandonteam.com, and point in the right direction, depending on what the question is.
I really wanted to tell you thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing all this golden, I'm not gonna say nuggets because this is a book. There's so much knowledge that you can share with everyone on how to grow a business and how to help people also achieve what they want. I really look forward to keep working with the team and also get to know everyone a little bit more and see what we can achieve together. I want to thank you for being a Maestro.
And you've been awesome. So it's been great talking with you.
I'm just loving hosting the series, learning a lot. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to learn more about the Landon Team or his Maestro Group, click on the links below this video, and we'll talk soon. Pura vida.